I'm up in this forest looking for a tree to harvest for my spear. The tree that I'm looking for is locally known as bunchberry. It's a flexible hardwood that's very dense. It actually sinks when it's still green. It doesn't need to be perfectly straight. It can have long, slow bends. It just has to be free from any quick, severe bends. This one should be fine. I like to gather from areas where there's multiple trees growing in a short distance. That way the trees that are left behind have more space to grow and you're leaving a healthier forest. I always cut to length right on the spot so that I know exactly what I'm getting. Take a little bit of time to do a quick straightening and this thing will be ready to go. I love these forests, they're very peaceful. The remainder of the manufacture for the spear is going to take place on the beach. Here I'm gathering up some pieces of wood that I'm going to use the bark from to lash the spear parts together. I'm gathering the bark from a tree that's locally known as Haiti or Maho. It's got heart-shaped leaves and it is abundant on the beaches throughout tropical Americas. I'm going to gather up a couple of these things, remove the leaves, and get started on putting this thing together. I'm also going to be doing the last bit of work on the bone pieces for this spear. I've got 3 parts that I'm working on. This is the central spear part. This is the central tine of the spear. It's going to go in the middle of the spear. And then there's the 2 barbs, which are going to go on each of the 2 prongs of the split stick that I'm going to be making. These sandstone slabs are excellent for working down bone. It's a lot easier to use these than it is a file on such small pieces, and it works really quickly. I'm going to split off this bark, starting at the tip, to break the pieces of wood off as I go, and then I'm using my wrists to keep the bark from peeling out too quickly. I'm not going to turn this into reverse wrap cordage, I'm just going to use this bark as is. There's a couple of advantages to doing that. The main one being that it won't stretch. Reverse wrap cordage stretches, so this way that it won't stretch at all, and also the bark sits very flat on the spear shaft and the surface area makes it so that it grips it really well and won't slide up or down the spear shaft at all. This first lashing is to keep the piece of wood from splitting down its entire length. I'm going to split the tip of this spear point so that I can make what's called a Leicester spear. The spears that I've had the most success with thus far have been just a simple spear with a piece of bone at the end of it, but the disadvantage to that is that when you miss, which happens often enough, you strike that piece of bone on the rock bottoms that we have here, and then you got to turn around and go into the beach and fix the piece of bone. I got a couple of pieces of wood that I'm using to wedge in between this piece of bone and the 2 forks of the spear, and then I'm going to lash these 2 together. This is known as a Leicester spear. So with a Leicester spear, it's got this central piece of bone, this central spear point, and then the 2 tines are going to be, the 2 barbs are going to be on each fork of this spear point. Here I'm measuring out the spot for these barbs to go in. With this type of spear, the part that's furthest forward is wood, so whenever I miss, I just dent the piece of wood, and it doesn't damage the bone parts, and I don't have to go back into the beach to repair. I've got this first barb on, and then I'll measure out my second one, and I can take the spear and shove the back end of the spear into the sand so that it holds it, and I don't have to use my hands to hold the spear while I'm wrapping this on. I'm going to be going after lionfish, which is an invasive species. I'm going to try to catch the lionfish in between these 2 barbs and spear it on that central spear point. Lionfish don't tend to move very much, so I don't need anything to help propel this through the water. Just use my arms and thrust with it like a thrusting spear. The larger lionfish tend to hang out in 20 foot of water or deeper, so I'm going to use these flippers so that I don't expend too much energy getting down to the bottom. Without the flippers, you spend so much energy that you have to. It gives you less time at the bottom and on one breath. And I'm gonna always take a look at the water before I go in, just to see what's going on out there. I'm not really looking for fish so much as I'm looking for which way the drift is going, so that I can plan out my hunt as I go. Another beautiful day in paradise. I'll spot the fish from on top, dive down, and hopefully, with a little bit of luck, make a nice harvest and eat some dinner.